right, I'd like to call this meeting of the Cunningham Township Board to order. It's Monday, May 11th, 2020. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Trustees Brown, I see him. I'll come back. Colebrook,
Here.
Hersey,
Here.
Jacobson,
Here.
Jacobson, Miller,
Here.
He's at,
I'm here.
Roberts,
Here.
and Wu.
here. We have a quorum.
Mayor Marlin,
Next up is minutes from here. Next up is minutes from the previous meeting, from April 13th, 2020. Is there a motion? So moved.
Yeah, I'll make a motion
I'll
that we
move
approve them.
approval of the minutes.
I heard Dennis move. Mary Alice second. Sure. Okay. Any corrections? Will the, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none, public participation. Does anyone wish to address the Cunningham Town Board? Clerk, do we have any raised hands?
I don't see any.
Okay. Committee to, all righty, committee to verify bills, town fund and GA fund.
Good evening. I hope everyone had a great Mother's Day. Thank you, Mayor Marlin, for your message. I thought that was very sweet. The town bills this last month in the town fund, we had $51,124.54 in expenditures. In the general assistance fund, we had $73,330.80 in expenditures. The total was $124,455.34 in expenditures. And just in terms of our statistics, we have 150 participants as of May 1st, up from 133. 63 are homeless. Last month, that number was 55. We did, of that homeless group, 28 have found temporary housing for COVID shelter in place since the order went into effect. It's a larger number of males, 97 men and 62 women and 0 transgender. The average age has stayed stable around 46, slightly lower than last month. We have served 265 total urbana residents with general assistance this year. And of that, 113 have been homeless, or about 43% of the total. You also see in the bills that we had 4 general assistance cases, down from 5 last month. They've all been eviction prevention. We also did 8 COVID rental assistance supports reimbursed by the United Way Fund this month. Our total household serves have been 99, average of about 10 a month. I'm happy to answer any questions folks have about the bills.
Any questions for Danielle? Okay. Is there a motion to place on
I'll make a
file?
motion to place bills on file.
Second.
Second?
We need to approve the town fund.
Okay. Motion to approve the town fund. Jared?
Motion to approve. Sorry, I'm muting my mic.
There seems to be a... And was that Sharice as a second?
Yeah, second.
All right. Any further discussion? All those, do we need a roll call, Charlie? Fred?
No, nothing.
No, but you also need to approve the general assistance fund, not just the town fund.
That's correct.
It was
So
the general.
I'll make a motion to approve the general assistance fund as well.
I'll second.
All right. So we have, let's just take them individually since they were made individually. All those in favor of approving the town fund, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. We also have a motion for approving the general assistance fund. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed, that motion passes. Reports of officers.
So as you see in my my supervisor memo, which went out on Thursday, our COVID rental assistance fund, which is countywide, is specifically for folks who are unemployed due to COVID. This includes undocumented families. We dedicated 7,000 and United Way and Community Foundation dedicated 20,000. We've served, as of the time of this memo, there's actually a number since, 17 households to date. I think as of today, I looked and we're at 23. And at the time, there were 99 calls for rental assistance. So we are seeing that program starting to take off. We also prepared for the town board the assistance increases. You'll see that essentially before we did case closures, we were at 158. I then closed 8 cases, most of them for people who have moved out of the township or gotten on Social Security, since we are not doing terminations due to the community work program. The Angel Donor Fund continues to bring in funds. We have raised a little over 32,000. 23,000 of that has come in since COVID. And we continue to provide weekly bucket brigade stay-at-home provisions with toiletries and resource guides to the community. We've expanded that to include the school district areas. So we do have some folks in mobile home parks to the northeast, and some folks who are with children in Urbana schools who are sheltering in Champaign. We've delivered over 211 buckets, serving almost 400 people. We also are working very hard in partnership with the continuum of service providers to really look to make sure that we can move homeless residents into more permanent and stable housing during this time. So we'll be meeting again this week on Wednesday, but we continue to help people apply for subsidized housing opportunities. And we are working with the Housing Authority, which is now allowing those who have been homeless in a shelter in the last 14 days to move to the top of wait lists. This is a really important change that is allowed now by HUD policy under the in response to COVID-19, and hopefully we can move there'll be about 70 vouchers through that and a number of vouchers through Regional Plan Commission. So we're really hoping that in addition to addressing the crisis that is COVID, we can try to move people into some permanent housing and address the long-term homelessness problem while keeping the community safe and the homeless residents safe. Just want to let folks know who are listening that Green Street is closed. You probably saw that. That also means the access to the township building has been changed, and therefore we're asking people to enter to access the township from the alley off of Ray Street rather than from Green Street. We do have very light foot traffic these days, so this was probably good timing for the M4 project since we have less folks than usual coming to our building. Our staff do remain on the premises and open. We are answering phone calls. We are greeting walk-ups through a video doorbell system. And we continue to pass checks to homeless residents in safe ways. I also want to announce that as of very recently, public health is now testing any resident who is an essential worker having contact with the public. And so anyone who is in contact with the public can call 239-7877 and basically be directed to receive testing. And I believe that is free testing in the community. I'm happy to answer any questions about this last month's activity. It's been a very busy time at Township.
Diane, can I ask a question?
Yes, go ahead.
Danielle, I was hoping you could expand upon what the COVID Relief Rental Assistance Fund actually does, if you could tell everybody.
Absolutely. So the COVID Rental Assistance Program, and there is a link in the supervisor memo to the RPC website. But essentially this was we launched this in partnership on March 25th, and it's 1 month of rental assistance. So whatever they're paying for a month on their lease, we would provide for individuals and families that have been laid off due to the pandemic. It's a one-time payment up to $700 maximum. And it's for people who essentially do not qualify for unemployment insurance. Because as you know, the federal government has added a bonus on unemployment. So folks are generally taken care of. But for those who are undocumented, for those who do not qualify for unemployment, cash economy, other kinds of things, essentially as long as they live in Champaign County, they're not receiving any housing subsidies and they had earned income prior to the governor's shelter in place order. And they can up to 250% of the federal poverty level. They can essentially call the hotline that we have set up with our RPC has set up a hotline, and that number is 877-548-4205, and that's the number that people can call to be routed either to COVID rental assistance, or if they do have income, they will be routed to our standard countywide program. That phone's been ringing off the hook.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Bill?
Yeah, thanks. I'm encouraged, especially because the township has such a good background experience in working with a lot of various agencies that are receiving additional federal and state money to help support people. So I think by leveraging that money with our expertise in the township, I think that's really important. I had a couple questions on the, it's really encouraging that people could get out of the shelters because that's a big public health risk to have people in crowded conditions. Just wondering if there would be enough, if there's been discussion, if there'd be vouchers to also kind of prioritize people that are living in crowded conditions, like 2 families in 1 house, to try to, if they're already on the waiting list, to get them moved up in the list. And is this part of the CDBG money, the new money that's coming for that you've been discussing at the continuum of care meetings?
So a couple of things. First, the housing authority received money specifically to PHAs. Excuse me 1 second. My dog is whining. I'm so sorry, he got trapped and he was letting me know that. The specific announcement through the housing authority is from monies that came to public housing authorities, and they're using that to expand the vouchers by 50. And it's really going to be specifically for anyone who has stayed in the shelter within the last 15 days of, or 14 days as of their announcement last week. The over occupancy issue is a huge issue when I talk about women with children being left out of a lot of the homeless services. I'm referring to that problem. So there's two definitions of homelessness. The HUD definition of homelessness, which does not consider people who are doubled up or tripled up to be homeless, even if they're sleeping on couches or, you know, floors or whatever in attics, as long as that's not considered an issue. Including if they're staying with people with Section H vouchers and they're not allowed to stay there, they're not considered homeless. There is the McKinney-Vento definition of homelessness, and this is a homelessness that recognizes women and children specifically who are homeless and really doubled up and tripled up. There's been a long-standing kind of federal fight at the level of Congress to expand the definition of homelessness. There are forces that don't want the United States to look like it has a large homeless population, and therefore they try to keep the definition very tight. And then there are those who want to serve people who are homeless, and they are trying to expand the definition. So to answer your question, Bill, the PHA money is specifically going to be for folks who have stayed in shelter in the last 14 days, so it would not include doubled and tripled up. That said, you as city council members will be discussing soon the use of CDBG funds. I know that the staff will be bringing you different, and I've been in many, many emails with Sheila. She's been very engaged throughout this process. So I know that you'll be looking at some of the options for those monies. I know that the big issue right now is the outbreak in Rantoul Foods, and we have, as of this afternoon, 82 positive cases out of 700 employees at that location. And a portion of those employees live in Champaign-Urbana. I believe it's 30% of the employees actually live in Champaign or Urbana. So it's a public health crisis that's near to home, and it's something that we need to address the issue of concentration and densification. But there are not a lot of tools to do that right now, except, and this is my last statement, it's very important for the public to know, both City of Champaign Township and Cunningham Township consider families that are doubled and tripled up with children to be homeless for our rental assistance program. And he recently changed his rules so that he could address that population, and we have historically addressed that population. So we are going to be getting the word out. I called Rantoul Township Supervisor, Mr. Rusk, and we're talking tomorrow. I want to let him know about that program. I'm reaching out to all the immigrant rights groups, and I'll be reaching out to the homeless service providers, and I announced this to public health. So for those who who have the money to actually de-densify and support 2 households, there is that deposit assistance or first month rent assistance. So we're hoping that we can help some individuals that way, but there really is a longer term need that can't be addressed from our program, to be very honest.
Thank you, that helps a lot. The other question I had is about the bucket brigade. I know there's other organizations that do food distributions. I don't know how many of them are doing deliveries. Is there any way to coordinate with them to make sure our clients get on their lists as well? And is the bucket brigade, is that red herring meals? It looked like there were some charges for.
Yes. So so our specific bucket brigade is a partnership with the Channing Murray Foundation, where we pay at cost for meals. There's 3 meals if you're a single or double. If you have 4 or more people, we deliver additional meals to their houses. They also, with the meal, bring a bucket of 2 weeks of provisions and guides, toiletries, a face mask, etc. And so that partnership has been going for the last 6 weeks. I'm in close conversation with, what is it called? CU Together, and other agencies that provide food. And for those that have additional needs, we do direct them. But we also have a number of partners directing people to our program as well. There doesn't, there's still a lack of food support in the community. So we're all partnering together the best we can to meet that need.
That's great. I know one size doesn't fit all, and especially if someone's in a hotel or someplace where they don't have a kitchen, they need to have prepared meals. Thanks.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Wayne Williams, did you have a report?
Really quickly, as many of you know, property tax bills came in the mail last week, and our phones have been ringing, and we're doing our best to answer every single call and answer every single message we get. We are still in the process of doing our revaluations, and that's it. Oh, I would like to know when someone does call the assessor's office, and I know this will sound cliche, there's not much we can do about the tax bill per se. All we can do is adjust the assessment. So when you're looking at your tax bill, pay close attention to two numbers, the assessed value, and right above that on your tax bill, the estimated fair cash value. If you think the estimated fair cash value is too high, give our office a call. Let's see what you can do. If you think it's too low, congratulations. That's it.
Questions? Mary Alice?
So I know that some people, when they opened up their tax bill, no longer have their homestead exemption. Is that something that your office puts on the bills, or is that something that the county does?
So generally homestead exemptions, the general homestead exemption, also known as owner-occupied exemption, those stay on. There are a couple of cases where they don't. If it's a renter's exemption, you have to renew every year. The senior exemption is one that you have to reapply for every year. So if you don't reapply for your senior exemption or your senior freeze, you won't get it the following year. And that's a county policy, not a township assessor policy.
So if it did for some reason fall off your homestead, what should somebody do then?
You should.
It shouldn't change, right? So.
I'm sorry?
I said it shouldn't change. It should be correct. But if it's not correct and for some reason it has been changed, who is the party responsible for updating that?
If it's just the senior exemption, you'd call the county assessor, and their number is
the homestead exemption.
So again, the homestead exemption generally doesn't fall off. There's some cases where so you're not allowed to have two homestead exemptions if you have two different homes, right? So there's some cases where we have found people that have more than one homestead exemption, and those were removed. But if it's a homestead exemption, you can call our office or the county assessor. And our office number is 217-367-7059. The county assessor is 217-384-3760.
All right.
Bill had his hand up, and then Eric.
Yeah, I posted a note for people to check because that happened to me. My homestead I've lived in the same house for 25 years, and my homestead exemption disappeared. But I was able to call the number on the tax bill, and she was a little confused at first. It must have been some kind of fluke, some kind of computer glitch or something. Haven't heard of a lot of people that happening to, but I called and she said to go ahead and make the first payment and they would send me a corrected bill. So it wasn't a big deal for me.
Eric?
I'm a little puzzled by the requirement for exemptions based on age that you would have to reapply each year because you don't get younger.
I am too, Eric.
Okay.
Any other questions?
And let me be clear, that requirement's a county requirement. It's not
Sure.
The law allows for the county to opt out of that. That does not happen. I would encourage you to call your county board members. I've sent a letter to the county board chair, but did not get a response regarding this issue. I was planning on sending the same letter to the county executive. I think it's ridiculous. Over more than half of the counties do not require seniors to annually reapply for their senior exemption.
Okay, sounds like a good issue for the county board to take up. Any other questions for Wayne? Thanks, Wayne. Is there any unfinished business? All right, we'll move on to new business. Ordinance number T 2020-05-001. The ordinance approving the annual budget and appropriation ordinance for FY 2020 to 2021. Danielle?
Thank you. So right before this meeting, I sent you the draft budget, which we'll be asking for you to put on file as of May 13th. There's a News Gazette announcement that will go out and it'll be posted on the website, on our website. It'll be available at our office and at the clerk's office. I thought that I would give you kind of a short overview of the presentation. And then I'll be reaching out to ask. You'll have 5 weeks to review the budget, provide any input you'd like to give, ask whatever questions. The public hearing, because of the 30-day notice requirement, usually we don't have 30 days between town board meetings. And so we are asking for a reschedule of the regular meeting from June 8th to June 15th to allow that 30-day process to take place. If you, for some reason, were not able to access your, I see there's not a chat in Zoom. So since you may have not been able to access your email, if you go to tinyurl.com/township budget, you will also see a version of the budget, the draft budget. So just in case you're having trouble with email, tinyurl.com/township budget will also get you there. So essentially, I just want to hit the top points. I've talked a lot about the situation of poverty and housing insecurity. There's a whole page there for you. The pieces I want to drill into are really what is relevant for this coming year. We will continue to keep general assistance payments at $300 a month. That went up from $265 for the last 4 or 5 years, up to the $300. City of Champaign Township GA payments are now $304. You will see that we've had a rise. It was a larger bump in 2019, but we'll, by the end of the year, be probably funding at about the same level. We do anticipate a pretty significant increase in general assistance. Honestly, that's the biggest change. I anticipate 190 clients on average. I'm really hopeful that we can keep it at that. The budget then to cover that 190 clients at $300 a month, we're at budgeting $684,000. I've also increased the rental assistance budget. I expect, especially when the eviction stay is lifted, that we will have a number of eviction prevention and rental assistance requests. We're estimating 200 Urbana households will be served at an average of 600. It is the case, however, that because of the CDBG funds, state and federal dollars, there's a lot of different partners coming to the table. We may not need that full amount. And maybe in a month, within this month, I might have a better sense of what that budget could look like. But I have budgeted liberally, I guess, for rental assistance. I have unfortunately had to go down in consolidated social service funding as we see rises in GA and RA even before COVID. We're looking at $100,000 for consolidated social service funding. At this time, because it's such a moving target, I know I've been in conversations with Sheila and Melissa to try to understand, what the best approach is. as some of the programs that had applied for that fund won't be able to function at the level or with the same design as they had when they applied. So we will be returning to you with some information about our suggestions going forward with that fund, but we're still looking at making that allocation. I did set aside some other funds in terms of grants to address emerging needs. We believe that, you know, as things are changing, it's very difficult to predict the future. So we've set aside $68,000 in emerging need situations. I have increased staff hours slightly, but as you'll see, there's really no increase in staff costs beyond anticipated rise in healthcare. So we've basically we have a number of people who are working part-time as per their choice, and that does help us to control our staffing costs. I have increased the budget for bus passes because they're an entitlement of general assistance participants, and we expect an increase with that, but it's not particularly significant. I have been able to come down on our internship program some. I think we'll keep the same level of interns, but we had a smaller than expected expenditure this year. And I am anticipating more angel donor expenses as we see more angel donor funds coming in. I think we'll see Social Security recovery payments, which really ballooned this last year thanks to our SOAR advocate part-time position. We expect to capture about $25,000 in the next year, and that covers that position. So that's wonderful. We over doubled the income from the year before with additional advocacy around that. So that's been great. We are considering a direct mailing to Urbana households about our services, particularly in light of the increasing need of general assistance and rental assistance. Honestly, and as you know, there's a lot of people who are facing unemployment or insecurity in their rent, sometimes really for the first time in their life. And it's important that people know the township is there for Urbana residents, and that's what their dollars go towards. I think the only other thing I would mention is, you know, we did do a decrease, or we did a payout with Carl Hospital. And so you'll see that balance in terms of that fund has decreased. Wayne, I'm not sure if there's anything you'd like to add from your memo. I'll kick it to you if you want to add anything.
I'll just kind of go over the top lines. Overall, the assessor's budget, I'm looking for an increase of just over 2%. Though the vast majority of that is to purchase a new server for our office. And I'm still getting quotes on that expense. What you're gonna see is when this fiscal year is over, I am gonna vastly underspend this fiscal year, which is a good thing. A lot of that has to do with we didn't get the amount of appeals, commercial appeals, despite a rather hefty increase in commercial assessments. However, I kept that line item even because there's likely going to be another increase in commercial assessments. So we want to be prepared in case we need to get appraisals and defend our assessments. Any questions? Oh, the healthcare line. I am anticipating a 10% increase in healthcare, but you'll see that the line is even to last year because of a change in an employee mix.
Any questions for Wayne?
I would like to add that we are reaping some of the benefits of paying down our unfunded IMRF liability. Our IMRF employer contribution is lower than it has been since I or Danielle have both started here at the township.
Jared and then Mary Alice.
Wayne, I had a general question that I guess would go to you and Danielle, since both of your budgets are in this, and that's, I mean, I guess we don't really know where funds for the city and the taxing bodies in general, how they're going to be affected by COVID. And, you know, obviously we're going to be impacted. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Are both of your budgets, I know Danielle, you said you had 68,000 set aside, but it sounds like it's kind of earmarked to be for needs rather than budget shortfalls. Are we anticipating a 5% decrease, a 10% decrease? Are we anticipating any of that in these budgets you guys are proposing?
I think that the tax assessments are out for this year, so I would assume that we would see decreases in the year after. Certainly the grants program is a place where the other grants program is a place for contraction if need be. I've also listed in the section about the levy, I've shown that essentially, you know, as I have mentioned to you before, we have originally saw general assistance go back to its historic averages, which is higher than the total tax levy because of a reduction in the tax levy in 2015. And now with COVID, we're seeing a spike. And we could see, as I said, up to 190, maybe even 200 general assistance participants. If that's the case, I basically laid out some options. One is to reduce costs with the potential elimination or constriction of programs and possible cuts in staff. So, you know, that social service funding would be likely a target. And I could tighten the general assistance qualifications. We could also increase income through a levy increase. And I'm also working to get the township GATA compliant so that we would be available to receive state grants specifically for the purposes of our participants. So I'm definitely looking at other income sources outside of the levy. But I do expect if there's a decrease, and Wayne can speak to this as well, that we would see that in the years after there had been contestation of property values. You know, all bets are on the table basically. And the way township functions is I'd like to provide as much support as I can to participants in need. And when that is not possible, we have to constrict the program requirements and potentially close programs if needed.
Diane, before you have a motion, there's an error in the agenda entry. This is not a motion for an ordinance approving the budget and appropriation ordinance. It's a motion to designate the tentative budget. Then
To designate, can you repeat that?
Motion to designate the tentative budget.
Designate the
Yes.
tentative budget, okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to add, you know, the main source of our revenue is property taxes. Historically, property taxes are a very stable revenue source for government. We don't rely at all on sales tax. We rely on a little bit of personal property replacement tax, which is that particular income stream is more tied to the economy. We rely a little bit on interest income, very little bit on interest income. And while we were able to increase that through better negotiations with our banks, we live in a time where interest rates are near zero. So that, but again, we don't rely that much on, our main source is property taxes, and that's a very stable source for government.
Okay, any other questions? Mary Alice?
Danielle, I'm wondering, can you tell us roughly what you expect the balance to be after your proposed amounts for your budget? Because I know that we've been spending down what we've had in surplus. I'm wondering what the bottom line in surplus would be if this budget was passed.
Absolutely. Yeah, so if you want to go to the very last page of the budget, there's a beginning balance and an ending balance. And then you can also look by fund. Each fund has a beginning balance and an ending balance, and that's also in the listed in the ordinance as well. So essentially, if we were to, the beginning balance that's listed here, so that you know, is our anticipated balance at the end of this fiscal year. So we essentially looked at where we believe we'd be at the beginning of the fiscal year, July 1, and then the ending balance after the expenditures that have been made. So we were at 1.84 approximately, and that goes down to 1.11.
So if the budget is passed as is, basically what we have in savings would be 1.1 million? That's what I'm
Yes,
hearing you
I
say.
believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, that is about where we want to be. I mean, we actually, that would give us, you know, essentially a full year in the bank. Some of that balance, I believe that balance excludes the Carl Hospital and OSF set-asides. So we pull out that piece, which we've set aside into a savings account. And I believe it also excludes a $150,000 capital fund, which you approved last year. But it would be the remaining piece. I think the big issue, if you look at the general assistance, the bump from what is, you know, in the past been 300,000 to almost 700,000 is a huge piece of that. So if you look between the funds, the town fund is almost balanced. It's that almost all of the deficit is in the general assistance fund. And that's the piece that it's a combination of the reduction of the levy by 250 and then the increase in services and demand. That's basically where you get that shortfall, that budget shortfall.
Eric?
So just, sorry,
Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
it's okay. I was
So-
just gonna,
Go ahead, Mary Alice.
so as I look at this, if I look at the general assistance fund, we have 1.2 million projected as the beginning balance.
Mhm.
We will receive 400,000 next year, right? Am I looking at that correctly? And then we are estimating that the estimate of expenses for each of the aforementioned, we're estimating of spending 1.1 in general assistance next year.
Correct. So if you take that beginning balance and you take the deficit spending and general assistance, that's where you get the end balance.
Okay, all right. So we would be down to 574,000 in the general assistance fund at the end of.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, that's where the large deficit, if you look at the other fund, there's a smaller deficit that shows up. That said, as Wayne has mentioned before, you know, he's in the middle of a quad year, and so he's added an additional staff member for this current year and next year, the field staff member. And so my understanding in conversation with him is that after that work is complete, that he would go down as a staff member. And I may also need to remove one of my part-time staff members at that point as well. So that would balance some of the equation. And then essentially we just need to figure out, are we going to increase the levy, or are we going to constrain the criteria for our programs and address the social service funding? So I think that's really the decision point that we've been heading toward for a while. And I certainly welcome the town board's input on that process. You know, in my opinion, the public holds the township in a very high esteem, as evidenced from the Angel Donor Fund activity, from the amount of kind of press and support that we've received from Urbana. And if the citizens of Urbana would like to vote to restore that GA fund, then we could continue to provide general assistance. And if the citizens would like to say, no, we want to keep it as is, then we're in a position where we have to constrict. And I believe that process could either be done through a ballot referendum or through the town board voting to put it on the ballot to discuss a levy. So I think that's something that, just in the larger scheme of things, I would like to discuss with the town board, whether or not it makes sense for us to try to restore the levy at this time when we're facing such an increased need.
Okay.
Eric?
So nothing, no new insights, but I just want to see if I understand an outline. This coming year, we're going to take down a little over half of the funds that we have for general assistance, from 1.2 million to 400,000. And obviously that can't continue for yet another year. So
Correct.
you're saying at that point, there's a hopefully there's a choice, at least a somewhat difficult choice, but hopefully by that time there will be a readily available vaccine and economic activity and jobs will be restored to close to normal. Am I understanding the whole thing?
I have budgeted for a, I'm hoping we will consider it a worst case scenario. I budgeted for 200 households to receive general assistance, up from 100. And I've budgeted for 190 people to be on our rolls, which we have seen historically at other times when we were in recession. And with those two things, one being a new program and one being an old program, we would, we would reduce the fund balance. I think what I guess I'm saying is, in this moment, given that we do have a healthy fund balance, because of low general assistance rolls over that 4-year period when Ms. Mayo was supervisor, I think that we should, as a township, invest in helping people during this COVID crisis. And that's a good use of that surplus, which was stored up over that time frame. I certainly do not consider this to be a balanced budget or sustainable, but I would say this is an investment that we're making in this next year to support our residents. And then we will either need to increase, and they're, both through the levy and through grants, we should be looking at that increase. And then, or we could do a significant decrease to make sure we're back to a balanced budget. And I'd like to try for one, but if we need to do the second, I'm ready to do that as township supervisor.
Bill Brown?
Turn on your mic.
Yeah, I'll move to designate the tentative budget for fiscal year 2020 to 2021 and place it on file.
Is there
I'll
a
second
second?
that.
Moved by Bill Brown, seconded by Eric. Any further discussion? Is this a roll call vote, Fred?
No.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion passes. Second motion is to reschedule the regular meeting of June 8th to June 15th, 2020, and this would also begin at 6:30 p.m.
Okay, I'd make the motion that we reschedule that meeting for June. As
Second.
indicated.
Was that Jared?
That was me.
Okay. Moved by Dennis, seconded by Jared. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? That motion passes. And with no further business before the town board meeting, we are adjourned, and this will be followed by the Urbana City Council meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so much.
Danielle.
Everyone stay safe.
You
Thank you.
too.